All right, what's up, oil and gas startups? Got a long time. The show I feel like it's been a long time in the making. Got my friend Summer from the Baldwin Group in here today. Summer, we first met several years ago, I believe on LinkedIn. I was like, who's this lady messaging me about you're just like going off about insurance and oil and gas and like so passionate about it. And got me thinking about insurance all the time now. And so like you're very effective in your communication of how important insurance is. And so real quick, I'm trying to figure out how I wanted to segue into this show, but we're going to be talking about insurance and oil and gas. And first, tell me about who you are, what your background is, and then we're going to talk about like all the doomsday shit and insurance and oil and gas and how operators can operate in this industry and what they should be looking for on their lens through insurance. So first, tell me who you are.
Well, like every person that works in insurance, nobody wakes up and says like, I'm going to be an insurance professional. That's it. It took a global pandemic to push me.
I don't remember any kids in the elementary yearbook saying that they wanted to be in the insurance and industry. So you're on point there.
I'll never forget sitting down at like a Jones Day discussion talking about litigation through claims, and he begins the conversation with, raise your hands if you actually grew up and wanted to be here. He's like, that's right, none of us. Yeah. So he's like, well, we'll save how you got here for later, but let's all address that life brought you here. So I actually worked in Medtech for a very long time, spinal implant sales. I was actually the individual that would go in and stand in the operating room and show the surgeons how to use our products. We had surgical, one of the first spine surgery robots that were created was when I was with Globus. We also had surgical navigation, surgical planning softwares, really innovative, complex titanium 3D printed.
Yeah.
So that was when I knew I fell in love with that consultative sales approach where you're in there, they're selling a card where it's just transactional, and then there's being value.
Yeah.
And I've never been able to be that type of person that can just do that cringe
transactional
email or LinkedIn DMs where I just word vomit you. I still do that sometimes. So that career was going great. And I was kind of at the point I didn't want to see myself as that hypertensive, 3 times divorced, 50 something, working from 4 a.m. to, 12 a.m. Monday through Friday, and this is real stories, couldn't go on vacation without a surgeon calling and saying, what do you mean you're out of town? I hate the guy that replaces you, and actually having to abandon my family. And
Yeah.
So I decided it was time to move up, go to corporate. Was going to go after an area VP role, then eventually hope to be the first female VP for the Southeast. Mm-hmm. So I decided Houston, because it is one of the largest spine markets in the world. And, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere.
Yeah.
It's like the concrete jungle of spine sales. So I was like, this is it. My career.
It's very, very interesting. I didn't know Houston had that claim to fame of being the center of spines. So
if I'm listening to all you Medtronic guys, Stryker, done a great job holding your footage out here. But essentially, my start date was March 1st, 2020, in a brand new territory, selling products for a surgery that was deemed elective.
Yeah.
So, I did what everybody else does, and I just sat around inside of my new apartment overlooking Midtown, and I was on a paid vacation, essentially. And, every, true love story, I met my now husband on a dating app while locked in a brand new city. And he happened to be an out-of-work petroleum engineer that's a completions consultant. So he was obviously very busy during the pandemic. And we moved very fast, fell in love, got pregnant. He still was out of work. I was essentially just buying time until my paid vacation was over.
Yeah.
And I had a very good friend who had an insuretech company. I was like, listen, baby on the way, both of your jobs, who knows what it's going to look like. At one point in time, we were considering my husband going back to college. It was a very scary time for the people working for the independents, those consultants.
No. Sometimes you forget, just how doomsday and bleak that it was for several months there. And just scary feeling.
I'll never forget the day that I heard his phone oil went negative. I heard the dings go off, and I'm like, something bad just happened. He doesn't get that many.
Did you ever see the video, the meme I posted where it was the D-Day scene from Saving Private Ryan, and it was about oil going negative and just everyone in oil and gas just getting blown up? Did you see that?
I don't think I was following you guys.
It went super viral, but like I made that, like that was probably the funniest piece of content I've ever made in my life, and it came from a place of like pain because like I was like really worried about all my friends and family. And what was interesting about that is like you go look at like the comments in like YouTube and Twitter, and everyone's like, you know, the lady's like, I just showed this to my husband, you know, he got laid off, and we're sitting here laughing. It was like it's like a dark way of bringing humor to a very tough time. So yeah, it's just like it's crazy how like easily we not forgot, but like it just kind of gets like pushed back into the memories. Like that time of 2020 is just like that really happened.
I had a kid. I mean, that's weird, real weird stuff happened. But, you know, when your back's up against the wall and, you know, you have a baby on the way, and one skill I have, my husband doesn't, is salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, kind of a sidebar, I grew up in an agricultural family. Everybody farmed. We showed horses. I also grew up spearfishing. So I had a lot of respect for, you know, what the oil and gas markets and their fluctuation affected my lifestyle. But I really fell in love with offshore oil and gas operations when I started spearfishing off the drilling rigs.
Yeah.
And that's when I kind of became like, if people could see what I saw underneath, and they would not associate this with this just environmental disaster that is no regard for the ocean life. I mean, the worst thing that ever happened to marine was the decommissioning program.
Yeah.
Because they killed just thousands and thousands of species that had made their homes. I mean, really
built
elaborate
these entire
systems.
ecosystems. Yeah. Yeah.
So there was that passion I had. Then, you know, when the love of your life, and, you know, we always expect men to be there for us, but sometimes I think women have to step up when they can.
Absolutely.
And that was when I realized that the insuretech product I sold could also be used independently for oil and gas operators for loss control inspections. So I kind of hung myself on that, and I said, okay, this will be a great way for me to meet people. I'll find someone that needs a completions consultant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Famous last words.
Yeah.
During that time, Awesome, that was the name of the startup, was acquired by a private equity group. I didn't want to go over with them. I really started to fall in love with the entire concept of like the oil and gas tech industry. Bardaz, Pablo Perez is a very good friend of mine. I know him through spearfishing.
Okay.
So he gave me a sweat equity option. Come work with me. I was happy. I was content. And then shortly after the acquisition, my old CEO came back and was like, I need you here. I need a champion and help oversee the sale of our products. Please come back. So I ended up going to Insurity, and for 2 painstaking years, I tried to make we can edit this, right? I just like ran out of very archaic software platforms built on Adobe Cold Fusion.
We can always edit. Look, I hit this little magic button right here.
Okay.
And it flags, and I just tell Jacob to edit it. And like Jacob's like up in the clouds somewhere, and he'll edit it.
Just lost.
Okay. I do it, and I just don't edit it, and I'm just like, yeah, I forgot what I was saying. So, anyways,
well then, c'est la vie, move forward. So I found the best way to try to make someone buy just something with just a heinous. The user interface reminded me of solitaire. So that was pretty scary. How am I going to get people to buy this?
Yeah.
Then I started to learn that essentially the company was structured just to be sold, and that's all it was.
Yeah.
So I came up with the bright idea of, well, let's take this. It's already being used for oil and gas inspections, and let's optimize it even further by putting, best in class blowout preventer and well control. And everybody can, upload their certifications on. We can really optimize for the insurance carriers, because I was understanding that half the reason they were pricing out well control programs was simply like the cost of the risk versus the data. And if you understand how these carriers make money is through underwriting profit. So they were essentially just pricing the market out based on very bad data. And, for every underwriter working in the oil and gas industry, they've maybe spent 2 weeks, they did the rig school out UT. And I mean, what do they really know to make an informed decision and and judge, yes, we will take on this much of the risk and at this rate.
That's so interesting because there's a guy on Twitter and he's been messaging me and he has an insurance brokerage firm. He's like, do you have any training program for my people? Like, he's like, I need them out in the field hands-on to learn as much about oil and gas as possible. And so
his people should just go out and learn for themselves like I did.
Yeah. Go make a hand.
Yeah. Just go out
marry
and
a
learn.
completions consultant and
Slide into people's DMs and look like an ass like I did.
Get on Hinge in Houston.
I've got a whole program. Contact me.
That's hilarious. And so kind of, lack of domain expertise and the underwriting processes and then bad data going into that. It's probably a huge problem.
So that was when, Inova and I teamed up and started working on a solution together. I think Dan Wessel is probably one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. And he saw very clearly, he's like, give this data to the risk engineering department. And now they're going to have, you make an underwriter feel more comfortable. They're going to give you a fairer rate. They're going to offer bigger lines of coverage. It's just all around the claims process. Part of the reason we're seeing premiums raise is like litigation, these nuclear verdicts where, especially against oil and gas, you get one juror that's, I'm anti-oil and gas and this family deserves, and like they are being excoriated for the highest amount versus what a lawsuit might have been 2 years ago. So they actually refer to it as social inflation in the United States.
Interesting.
Where our litigious nature, we ourselves are our own worst enemies for our cost of insurance. And you look at the auto side of it, and especially in the Permian Basin, I don't have to explain what that's like being out there and the horrific car accidents. Yeah. It's a significant impact on the entire oil and gas industry as a whole because they're going to charge more for those commercial fleets.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have a commercial truck hit a passenger vehicle head on, fatality. I mean, that can potentially kill a business. Just given the amount of money that claim would be in. This is a huge discussion out in the Permian among all the operators, is just getting sand haulers in particular off the roads, just getting fewer trucks on the roads, because it is like, I've become hyper aware of car accidents and like have this fear with like my kids and my family of just like being in the car, like driving out to West Texas, because you see so many head on collisions. And so, the implications, you have a high enough volume of those that it starts impacting insurance rates and things of this nature. And
I just believe that, operational data, and I'm just saying this is a very broad term, like whatever your, the directional drilling company you're using, whatever software provider you have, the data that you're given, especially when you're dealing with well construction, you can use that in your favor in a claims event to speed up the claims, make sure that you're not seen at fault, you get paid out because you deserve to get paid out on a claim. You've been paying those premiums, you've been a good customer, and just because, a jury or whomever, the adjuster says, no, you're in the wrong. Especially these independents, like they can really leverage like their software providers and their data providers.
It's interesting, like just from an individual with health insurance, like I've always hated how insurance companies play God, and it's like you pay all these premiums and then you need a medication and insurance companies say, no, you're not approved for that. And it's kind of the same concept here in the commercial space where you pay all these premiums and then when it comes time to use your insurance companies are always trying to weasel their way out of paying claims. And so how do you mitigate that? It sounds like, from your perspective is using data and things of this nature, but how do companies like really think about being able to make sure that they're first properly covered, and then when an event does happen that they're getting paid on these claims?
First, they need to recognize the importance of insurance. It's just as important as the finance that you're chasing. Matter of fact, there are insurance advisors that work within these private equity groups, venture capitalists, that say, okay, this is how we want to have this risk structured, et cetera, et cetera. So if you are trying to get acquired or whatever the case may be, let's just improve financial performance, you need to understand how important insurance is. I think everybody views insurance as we have to have it, and nobody cares about it until they need it. So first we need to
it
understand.
is like one of those things that's always like byproduct or on the back burner, and just kind of like you don't treat it as a primary issue. It's always secondary.
And then it's learning.
I do that. So
it's learning what you can do with your insurance. Learning, can you read that policy? And it's also, that's an albatross the brokers need to wear. Like, I think brokers have done a terrible job in recent years, and I'm sorry, I'm calling it out. There are certain brokerages that have been around for a very long time. They've had no competition. It's that boomer mentality of like, what do you mean software? What do you mean data? Like, it's very clear now that the implementation of data and tech within the oil and gas industry has revolutionized it.
Yeah.
So it falls on the broker to make sure that whomever is handling their insurance programs isn't just more than a golf buddy, that they really understand that broker, and here it goes back to you saying someone contacted you looking for real world training. You can't get that real world training. Like, I live in Midland. I breathe this. My husband goes to work. I hear about the problems that he has working for these small private equity backed CapEx mindset.
I didn't know you lived in Midland.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
God's country.
Yeah. I love it.
How I ended up from like living in Florida to Midland. I do.
Yeah. Hell of a transition.
It's, hey.
Midland's my hometown.
Fortune
so
I
have lots of love for Midland. One, the opportunities. That's Houston and Midland. I mean, this is energy capitals of the world, and so that's awesome. You got bonus points in my book for that. So you made a comment that I want to elaborate on a little bit, because you talked about the technological advancements in this industry, and how does that play into insurance? Tell me about that a little bit.
Well, I know your favorite buzzword is AI.
Yeah, it's not a buzzword in the sense that I use it.
I know.
Yeah. AI, machine learning.
AI, we actually utilize various AI programs, but they are backed with, human quality control. And the more data you allow to be held by these underwriters, the more data sets they're able to develop. And when you have a larger set of data, then they have their own models that they map out for risk that can help them have a more holistic view of the entire landscape.
Yeah.
And, I've seen it. Renewable energy companies have been wonderful whenever I collect the necessary data. And I spent a brief amount of time on the wholesale side. And in that value chain, that's any oil and gas company. Typically, we're going to have to place those policies in the foreign markets. That's non-admitted. So those underwriters over there are so far removed. Think about the guy that lives in Britain. Half of them couldn't even tell you what a pump jack is. So you have to think about conceptualizing for these people in terms of like, what does this mean? And I think that's where I don't think I know. For example, companies like LongPath. LongPath is actually approved by Chubb as a tech data provider to mitigate.
What is Chubb?
Chubb is a carrier.
Okay.
So when you deal with the insurance value chain, you have me, the broker, that represents you, the insured. Then you have the wholesaler who, okay, we're going to go out there. We're going to market this for you in the foreign markets. Then you have your insurance carriers. Then you have what are called reinsurers. They're the ones, Deepwater Horizon. There were multiple layers of insurance on that.
Yeah.
There were reinsurers that had to insure the insurance companies. So all of these companies can utilize this data.
I need a visual representation of this. It seems like there's lots of layers.
Now I'm just word vomiting insurance again.
No, this is actually really one. I'm dense when it comes to the insurance industry, so I appreciate you walking like through the entire value chain, because I didn't even know that there were such things as reinsurers or what they do. So
and they affect your insurance premiums.
Okay, so one, let's frame this up in like terms of an E&P, for example. You're going and you have a broker and then a wholesaler, and then you have, all these foreign entities, and it may be the guy in Britain and he doesn't even know what the fuck a pump jack is or what Midland is. And so from an E&P perspective, how do you position yourself to essentially assist these different stakeholders in the underwriting process to where you're getting the best rates and getting the best coverage and things of this nature? Like E&P today, how do you say, hey, I want to position ourselves to have the best strategy for insurance? What data do they need to provide? What essentially storytelling should they be doing for the underwriting process?
First of all, stop the gatekeeping. Be willing to share your data.
Okay.
We're here to help. We sign NDAs. You have no problem sharing your health data with the hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
Give your broker, give the carrier the necessary data. Then nobody likes raw data. Give good data in the sense of what your operations look like. It's more than just giving loss runs. But, when we were developing the well control solution, it gave live updates on the health of that well. And our big plan was that one day we would have enough data that we could actually model and predict a blowout based upon anomalies.
Mm-hmm.
Still not there yet. Unfortunately, the company shut down.
Yeah. So first thing is access to data. What kind of data? Like what kind of data do y'all look for in an underwriting process? Is it amount of wells operated? Is it barrels produced? Is it health, safety, and environmental data? Like what type of data are we talking about? All of it. Okay.
Every piece of data can be utilized because remember, there's many different insurance policies that you carry, whether it's workers' compensation, you have your large umbrella policies where the operator's extra expense, the environmental, but everything you just mentioned can be used in the underwriting process to assess your property, to assess your total insured value, right down to, data providers like Dispatch. If you're wanting to play around in the IRA and you need to carry tax liability solutions insurance, that data that's used with those companies based upon employees can really help with that prevailing wage and apprenticeship because that's a heavy lift.
Yeah.
So in turn, the underwriters are going to stack a big premium on it versus if a company gives a very nice package with a guarantee from their data provider that this is clean, top-notch data.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very broad answer because it's depending on the policy.
Yeah, on the policy and the application. My next question for you, put you in the hot seat, is like, if I'm an E&P and I'm sitting on this side of the table and you're an insurance broker, I'm sure a lot of these larger E&Ps have in-house teams that are working on insurance, just constantly. But say I'm small mom and pop, or like a mid-size, and I don't have an internal team. And it's like, I want to work with a broker as a partner. Like, I don't want to think about insurance. Like, I'll feed you all my data and I want you to really think about what we need for coverage. I want you to go out in the market and find it. Seems like there could be misaligned incentives there because you as a broker, you're going to want, the largest policies and things of this nature so that, maybe, I don't know how y'all's model works, but if it's commission based or whatever, how do you work with companies in that sense to say like, hey, we actually want to be a partner with y'all and we have your best interest in mind and want to make sure that you have the proper amount of coverage because you can be overinsured as well, right? And so how do you work with companies in that sense to like really establish yourself as a partner, not just a broker? Like obviously you guys have, the domain expertise and understanding of energy, but how do you position yourself? And this is more like me asking you if you like just how y'all operate the business and think about that.
I love this question. I like doing things that matter. There's that saying, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered.
Mm-hmm.
If you're overcharging or giving coverages that aren't needed, that are affecting that insured, there will be a time that you're going to have to answer to that. And someone will find out. And that's against your fiduciary duty. And that is something that at least I know at the Baldwin Group, I myself, it used to be people's lives in my hands. So I kind of find it very synonymous with oil and gas, that people's lives, livelihoods, financial success, their kids, they have a right to know. And it's very open conversation. Let's hypothetically say I was prospecting you and I would begin by saying, I'm here to be your consultant, your guide, partner. I obviously want to lower your insurance premiums. I obviously want to make sure you have the greatest amount of coverage. Because yes, I might take a smaller commission, but you know what? You're going to go tell 10 of your friends.
Yeah.
And I think we need to bridge that gap between insurance and oil and gas and the negativity seen between both and develop a partnership.
Yeah. I was talking about like when we originally met and you and I got on a phone call and you kind of opened up my eyes and to just the layers of industries and economies and how it all sits on top of the insurance industry and how insurance really can rug pull entire industries. And you see this happening in like residential real estate with insurance companies pulling out of California due to wildfires in Florida. I can't remember what the stat was, but I mean, the amount of uninsured homes in Florida, I mean, it's like the majority of the homes are uninsured. And then you have these massive hurricanes that could potentially come in and just wipe it out. I'm like, open up my eyes to just like how much is built on top of insurance. And you'd open up my eyes to that by saying like, hey, look, like oil and gas is becoming, you know, uninsurable. And I was like, oh shit, this can take down an industry if you're not able to convince insurance companies to underwrite these assets. And so that kind of leads into my next question is like how have things evolved over the last couple of years. You know, is underwriting getting harder, easier for oil and gas? Kind of give me the lay of the land in terms of underwriting.
These are great questions because, you know, I'm just not holding back. In 2019, there was a bill signed called the Net Zero Insurance Alliance.
Okay.
We're essentially in a virtue signaling ploy. Numerous brokers and carriers made a pledge that they would no longer insure oil and gas.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have to think about these people that are standing in the way of how our world runs because your insurance premiums are more expensive. If you can't insure, let's hypothetically say you have a really bad loss, you have to pay out of pocket. It's a trickle down effect that's going to affect you and I, the consumer.
Yeah.
So that aged very well, obviously. There were some carriers that really stuck by their gut. Nope, this is what we believe in. We're going to help. My big thing is that oil and gas is what's going to guide us to the energy transition.
Mm-hmm.
Got to keep the lights on.
Mm-hmm.
So get that out of the way. There are more and more players coming back into the market. I think there are some other companies that were very strategic and just kept their mouth quiet and just nobody bother us. There's people like God bless AIG. They stuck to their guns and, you know, they've got Just Stop Oil spray painting their London offices. Like, it's scary. The last time I was in London, like being from Midland, like the oil and gas person was, I mean, I definitely looked over my shoulder leaving because we were next door to that building.
There's a lot of people on Twitter that say they would pay me to go over to Europe and mix up with Just Stop Oil. I think it'd be great content.
I will come along. I will come along because I can't begin to tell you, like, stuck in taxi cabs from whatever human chain they've put across. They're just.
I've got I had this shirt made. It's a white shirt with big black letters, and it just says Big Oil. And I love that shirt. And I just like want to go over to. I
just want to ask him, how did you get here today? How did you arrive? Yeah. What was your method of transportation? And, you know, if they give me the like.
Oh, I thought you meant like metaphorically, like
how
did you get to this line of thinking? Not like physically, like how did you drive here?
I think it might be a cult. I mean, from what I've noticed.
I mean, it's a religion. You look at it, I mean, it's got all the hallmark traits of religion, and that's not like, look, like, is climate change real? Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, we've documented 5 ice ages in geology. Like, climate change is a real thing. But there's a pragmatic way to think about humans' impact on that and how we move forward and how we talk about energy systems and consumption and going and throwing soup on paintings and like, what the fuck does that do? Like, that's so far like to the extreme. But when you get to that side of the curve, I mean, it becomes a religion at that point. And so anyways, yeah, I can't like, one, I already don't like Europe in the first place. And then the fact that you have to deal with that is just crazy.
The hypocrisy is bad, but I digress from Just Stop Oil. There are more and more carriers working in the space. There has been a softening in the market. And I think we could continue to see rates become more affordable if we began to work in a partnership.
So we're seeing the pendulum swing back. We're seeing this across just kind of society right now, where becoming a little bit more pragmatic and less virtue signaling and understanding, actually energy is really important and oil and gas powers 80% of that. And so, and also, you know, it was really easy in 2019, 2020 when oil and gas was down in the market and not producing returns. Very easy to say that you're not going to support the oil and gas industry, but then when it starts cash flowing again, it's a little bit harder to turn your back to the industry. So that's good to hear that the market softening and that there's a lot more availability of insurance providers to the industry because it is important.
Yeah, but we, the brokers, need to do our job educating our customers, helping them optimize their risk strategies. I think there's just been too much complacency with like, oh, we renew every year with Glenda, and
yeah. So you think
she does a great job.
That's a major education hurdle. So is it teaching both sides of the market, like oil and gas operators, and then also teaching the actual insurers as well?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Like my first day, and full disclosure, I left that wholesale broker because they were so anti-oil and gas. I was like, I can't. I can't work for you. First day I walked in, we had to give our speech, who we are, where we came from, and told them what I did. I was developing those software solutions for, mitigating risk for oil and gas. And they're like, oh, yeah, so you're the enemy. Like that was, that needs to stop. I remember trying to give them my pitch and say, I think we should go after XYZ. And they don't even know, like, the independent operators in the Permian Basin are out there. Everybody just assumes that it's like big oil.
Yeah. No, isn't that crazy? It's like Exxon, that you can go find me on podcasts for over years. I'm like, guys, oil and gas isn't Exxon and Chevron and BP. I mean, there are thousands of companies in this space, not only from production to oilfield services to valve manufacturers. Like this is a very large industry, and you'd just be surprised that 99.9% of society doesn't know that.
And these are the decision makers that are saying what we will insure, how much we'll insure, what the rate. These are the people that are dictating the market and how much capacity is available. I mean, we can get more capital into the market with the right players. I mean, this starts with the lobbyists. I mean, I tell my husband, like, if you ever let me, I'd love to go lobby for oil and gas for insurance, because like proper education, the right people need to be recruited, and they've got to understand like oil and gas is who's going to optimize like geothermal. And, we serve far greater purposes than just, drilling holes in the ground and getting the black stuff out. I think people just assume the clampets and about as far as it goes.
Do love drilling holes though. Love drilling wells. But even you look at that, it's like, leading geothermal company out there, Fervo Energy. My friend Tim Latimer is the founder CEO. He's a completions engineer from oil and gas at BHP, applying technologies from horizontal drilling to geothermal. So oil and gas powers 80% of the world, and all these growing adjacent energy verticals are still dependent on expertise and resources from oil and gas. All energy is connected. And so, you can't demonize the industry. You need the industry if we're going to continue powering society. And so it needs to be able to be insured. If it can't be insured, there is no industry. And so really fascinating stuff. Sometimes like I've been kind of like just thinking like doomsday. I'm like, happens if you can't insure oil and gas assets like that? It just rug pulls the industry. And I think thinking about it from this approach of not putting insurance on the back burner as a secondary item, but thinking of it as a primary item. And hey, what can we do with our data and our technology that we're deploying to get better insurance coverage at cheaper rates? I mean, why would companies not be optimizing for that? I'm sure that this is a huge cost to them. So you should be spending more time in getting the best coverage that you can at the best price. So told me I should be an insurance broker, to be honest.
You do a great job at it. And that's what we need, is more like-minded individuals such as yourself that have that aha moment. And I hope your listeners, these startups that are like, God, what can I do? The next big thing. Make it easier for these CFOs, whoever is handling the risk finances in a company, to be able to like gather this data for the broker and, give good holistic view of your operations, so that you can go to that underwriter and say, paint a beautiful picture of this upstanding individual. And it goes so much further than how many employees you have, what are your loss runs, but, also real time. I still truly believe that one day we will use drilling data for better well control policies, not just the hypothetical, how many barrels, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. This is going to be completely out of left field, but you're going to appreciate this. So they're proposing a battery storage facility over here in Katy And it's one of the guys on my team, John Calfane. It's by his house, and it's 500 feet away from a high school.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got a problem because you've got John, who's a really smart oil and gas engineer here asking questions because, I mean, there's a lot of unknowns. Hey, what if this thing catches on fire? And I mean, it's right by the school. And anyways, the way that this would not fly in oil and gas, which is just like shows you the technical expertise of oil and gas versus renewables, is the way that they've modeled it out is like, oh, well, we've only modeled it out for if one battery pack or module catches on fire and the radius would be this. And John's like, okay, great. What about 100% catastrophic? And they're like, oh, well, we haven't seen it jump from one to the other. He's like,
they should talk to me.
He's like, but that doesn't matter. And he's like, what's the 100% catastrophic? Because like in oil and gas, we have to plan for that and prepare for that. Like that is like, I don't care if it hasn't happened, which I don't believe, but what if it does happen and what happens to those kids in that high school? So anyways, yeah, they should talk to you.
We'll take this offline. I helped, the wholesaler developed a battery energy storage, MGA, because it was impossible to get these projects insured because of the thermal runaways, and the markets and experts and people far higher intellect than me all came together and put a set of guidelines for how these projects should be built. I mean, spacing, 8 feet apart.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yes,
I'll have to.
I digress.
We'll get you the project name after this. But wrapping this up, if we have listeners that are at E&Ps, OFS companies, or any energy companies, and they want to talk insurance and talk about deploying new insurance programs in their company, where can they find you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn,
yes.
Summer Shedd-Campbell, or you can email me, summer.shed@baldwin.com.
Cool. We'll put links in the show notes for people to find you. If you're listening, you should reach out to Summer. She's badass. I've known her for a few years now and enjoy getting to talk to you. And appreciate you taking the time to come in today and school me up on insurance. I'm pretty dense when it comes to this topic, so I have probably even more questions for you, but thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
If you're listening today, you enjoyed the show, make sure to share it with a friend, share it with a company that needs to get on top of their shit in insurance, and we will catch y'all on the next episode.